Hello and welcome to Foreign Policy Focus, episode 70. I am the show's host, Kyle, and today's show I'm going to be covering mostly foreign policy events and topics. Hopefully this is interesting to everyone. If it is, please share the show either with your friends, your family, whatever, by giving a personal recommendation or just clicking the share button at foreignpolicyfocus.libsyn.com or going to my Facebook page, Kyle's Files, and share it from there. Either way, for everybody who's doing that, thank you so much. It is helping the show to grow. The Kyle's Files page is getting a lot more likes, a lot more views on all the content, and the downloads for the show is going up. So help me out if you can, and let's get into some foreign policy news. The first thing I want to talk about is we have 12 U.S. paratroopers being injured in Romania. As pretty much is the situation all the time now, there continues to be NATO war games going on in Eastern Europe, and I guess these paratroopers were likely part of one of these war games and were doing a mission that was apparently somewhat dangerous. The military seemed to think that the injuries were fairly routine by the sounds and just kind of the context of the statement that I read. So I'm guessing that what they're doing is they're, conducting some very dangerous drills because whenever if a real war would come, then they had to be able to do these very dangerous tasks. So this is just another example of how America's very aggressive foreign policy is putting more and more Americans at risk. We're carrying out these war games partly because, the troops need the practice, but also as a show of force to Russia. And because there's so much tension and hostility between the U.S. and Russia, the U.S. troops have to be so prepared all the time. Imagine a world where there's really not a hostility between the U.S. and Russia. It certainly seems to me that would be less likely that there would be any kind of all these, troop, training scenarios going on simply because the American people wouldn't pay for it or risk it. It would seem like a silly novelty exercise to do these kind of drills in a war where there's, no other country that the U.S. doesn't get along with because all we do is open our borders and trade with everybody. So, I just wanted to point out this story. I think there's a couple, kind of important things to take away from it, and that's just, I know we always see on the news that the U.S. is conducting these war games either by flying planes over the Baltic or Black Sea to upset Russia, or carrying out troop kind of war games in Eastern Europe or South Korea. At the end of the day, the news and everybody kind of portrays it as this is kind of an easy way for America to exert our power without risking anybody's lives. It's relatively cheap and very safe. There's no risk to the U.S. when really, there's risks outside of just the troops getting injured like we see here. When you're flying planes really close to Russian fighter planes, you never know what could go wrong. These planes are flying at hundreds of miles an hour, very close to each other, armed with missiles. It only takes a small mistake, I don't know, maybe, unexpected weather event that could put these two planes that were seemingly, just doing routine drills and nobody's threatened. And suddenly we have, at the very least, a couple of dead pilots, and at the very worst, a possibility of hydrothermonuclear war between the U.S. and Russia. And so there's just all these risks to the war games that nobody ever talks about. As a common theme on this show, I talk about how the, media kind of fails in what they're meant to do rather than being critical of the United States foreign policy. Often they just kind of read off the talking points that the generals and the Pentagon spokespeople give out. And we're just seeing that more and more often, especially in cases like this where tomorrow, again, whenever there's a, nuclear drill going on over the DMZ in North Korea, or there's U.S. planes or boats floating in the Baltic or Black Sea, the news will portray this as oh, cool, our military's doing war games and they're having fun and yay, and this is going to show Russia how much we could beat them up, so we're so excited, and all this propaganda pump up nonsense. But the reality is that people are put in risk when you conduct these dangerous missions, even if they're only against a fake target. And whenever, there's always the possibility that something could really go wrong, that somebody could misinterpret somebody else's actions. Of course, when you have, all these American troops in right up on the border with Russia, it doesn't take much for Russia to think, oh, those troops are coming our way, when really there's just a whole bunch of people all going to McDonald's at once or something like that. Next thing I want to talk about is that the U.S. is banning U.S. citizens from going to North Korea, and then the U.S. is asking that all U.S. citizens in North Korea come home by the 27th of August, I believe. So this has been portrayed in the media that the United States is only doing this because of what happened to the college student Otto Warmer, I believe his name was, and who was a hostage in Iran or in North Korea, and then eventually died from injuries or illness he sustained while there. I think one of the dangers here is that rather than this just being a reaction to the Otto Warmer thing, maybe we could see the U.S. looking to either increase sanctions or increase hostility towards North Korea. If there are a lot of U.S. citizens in North Korea, they could really be used as hostages by the North Korean regime. They could kind of take all the Americans and put them in the palace or wherever the hell Kim Jong-un lives and kind of say, well, you're going to have to kill a bunch of your own citizens to kill us, and meanwhile we're going to try to bomb you. I mean, the other thing is, too, it's just bad PR, even if the North Korean regime doesn't round these people up and use them as hostages and they're just going about their tours in North Korea. They could, be hit, friendly fire incidents, U.S. kill civilians overseas all the time, and so it would be, a real shame if U.S. civilians start ending up in the casualties in North Korea. I think the other possibility is that it looks like there's now a drought in North Korea that could compare to as bad as the drought North Korea had in 2001. I believe estimates say that drought killed hundreds of thousands of people, although North Korea really doesn't let people in and let them to see what's going on, so I think it's impossible to know any exact numbers, and I'm not sure which way the UN would tend to maybe lie on that. Either way, there was a drought in North Korea in 2001, killed a lot of people. The difference between that drought and this drought really is that there's less food sanctions going to North Korea, or food aid going to North Korea at this point because of U.S. sanctions. Time and time again, the Trump administration has looked to punish the Kim Jong-un kingdom by putting sanctions on them. Anybody who looks at the situation in North Korea knows that the leader is not going to starve. They look at him as a god. The more sanctions that you put on North Korea, the less the people have. It's not going to result in more or less prosperity for the people of North Korea. I think if you would look to decrease sanctions, that way the people in North Korea could live better, I think it could be a lot easier for them to take time and realize how terrible their station in life is. If you're at a point where you had to farm 16 hours a day just to stay alive, to have enough food to feed you and your family, I mean, you just don't have the time or the energy for a revolution. That may sound silly, but I think it requires a certain amount of luxury to be able to put down the farm equipment and go pick up arms and go fight in a revolution, and just to be educated enough to know that that's the right thing to do. Especially to start a revolution, you need a lot of ideology, a lot of information, a lot of even propaganda on your side, whatever, but you gotta rally the people, so you gotta be informed, you gotta know what's going on, you gotta know the history to know why what happened has happened. And so if the North Korean government is able to starve the people to the point where they just have to farm till exhaustion, sleep, wake up, and do the same thing, then the North Korean government can kind of ensure that there's never going to be any kind of revolution. And so with the increase of sanctions, we're not going to see, I think, what the kind of official U.S. strategy would be, which is that the people are going to rise up against Kim Jong-un because, boy, those American sanctions are so horrible, and they make people feel so bad, and then they're just going to get so mad, and they're going to realize that Kim Jong-un's the problem, and then they're going to go take out Kim Jong-un. However, if you're, starving to death, you simply just don't have the capability to go out and learn that, the American sanctions are in place, so you go and attack your leadership. So I guess, there's a lot of possibilities as to why the citizen travel ban happens now, why the U.S. is warning all citizens in North Korea to come home. Some of it is, maybe worse threats, maybe worse sanctions, maybe it's just because they're afraid the North Korean government will start kidnapping, U.S. civilians once this happens, to maybe try to trade them for some food or, what have you. It gives them leverage to have North Korean and our U.S. citizens. Now, one of the issues is that myself being a libertarian, I don't believe that the government should have the right to restrict people from traveling abroad. If an American wants to go and live in North Korea or spend some time in North Korea, they absolutely could do that. But since really World War I and the Lusitania, the United States has adopted a position that the United States citizens, as an American, since I was born American, I have the right to be protected abroad. So let's say I'm kidnapped by some Al-Qaeda people or some Taliban people in Afghanistan, and then the U.S. maybe carries out an airstrike against the people who kidnapped me and hit a home of other people instead. In, kind of the American playbook, now that's a legitimate strike. But you really gotta question that. Like, is the American government able to be the shepherd of the American people all over the world? Does every time that a tragedy happens to any American traveling in a foreign country, no matter, what kind of risk they knew they were assuming at the time, philosophically, this ban seems ridiculous to me and very unnecessary. Of course, it's the intervention that creates any need for the ban in the first place. So, just like with the travel bans coming into the U.S., for the travel bans headed to North Korea, all we gotta do is change the foreign policy and make it better, and then there won't be any problems and we won't need to quibble over these bans. So a story that I'm going to actually start off by apologizing for not giving any coverage to yet, even though it's very important, is what's going on in Israel. So I'm going to kind of update starting from, I believe, last week or maybe the weekend before. You have a shooting at the Al-Aqsa Mosque where I guess maybe 3 Palestinians, using what I read were improvised machine guns. I don't know if those are like pistols that were somehow altered to be like more like Tet 9s, or maybe they put a bump stop on the SKS and make it an AK-47, or maybe they, rig up a whole new device, with some pipes they found at the scrapyard or whatever. But it doesn't sound like whatever it was a kind of a traditional weapon that you would think of. In this, 5 people died, 2 Israeli police officers, and I believe all 3 shooters, or it may have been the other way, 3 Israeli police officers and 2 shooters. This leads to Israel shutting down the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is, of course, one of the most holy sites in the Muslim world, and certainly if you're a Palestinian Muslim, this is kind of the most holy site anywhere near you, in a site that the Palestinians have took a lot of painstaking effort to try to at least protect some of that mosque and the rights to use some of that mosque. I know that the rules there are pretty complicated. It may be that Egyptians or Israelis or Jewish people are now even allowed to pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but I'm not sure on all the details there. So Israel shuts it down. This upsets the Palestinians and then reopens it, I believe, last Friday with metal detectors at the mosque there. This, of course, causes protests to break out in Israel by the Palestinians, demanding that they go. This leads to clashes between the police and the Palestinians. From what I've been able to read, it seems that 6 people have died, 3 Palestinians and 3 Israelis. It seems that all the Palestinians were shot to death by the Israeli police, but I can't tell how the police officers died. It may have been more of improvised devices. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole background between Israel and Palestine, but if you listen to this show, you're probably somewhat aware that the real situation in Israel is that the Palestinians are the oppressed people and a lot of times live under military occupation. I think kind of the most telling thing about the Israeli state and how they treat the Palestinians is last year the Israelis knocked down some Palestinian homes and then built a road on it that only the Israelis were allowed to use. Now, I mean, even in kind of the Jim Crow South, I think something like this would have been considered fairly horrendous and outrageous, to knock down homes of a minority group and then build a road on top of that group and not even let those people use that home illegally. Just say, you are not allowed on this road. This is our road. This is I think this is a pretty telling thing to just kind of say that this is the general outline of what's going on in Israel. And so then, when you have that kind of situation, you could look at any number of circumstances, either shootings of police officers in America by people in very poor city communities, or terrorist attacks overseas. This is just a population that feels like they're constantly oppressed by an authority. And when you have that, and when you have communities, sometimes you have sick people in those communities who think the solution is to go out and kill people. Just like there's, you find several Israeli leaders saying that the problem is that the Palestinians are alive, and you certainly find that in the Palestinian language too, that the Israelis are the problem. However, it's just, the Israelis have all the power, and there's people on both sides with this kind of idea, and so then this leads to a case where you have some, gunmen go and mow down some Israeli police officers at a Islamic holy site. Now, I think some people like to pick up the story right there, right on that point, that what happened is that the Palestinians went and gunned down some Israelis, but that's not where it started. It started when the Palestinians lost their homes to their Israelis. It started when the people of Gaza are not allowed out of Gaza even to receive medical treatment in Israel. At times, even the people who live slightly better lives in the West Bank aren't able to get the necessary permissions to cross the necessary checkpoints around their cities to get to the doctors they need to. Palestinian workers leave for work hours early every morning to get through all the checkpoints that Israelis make them go through. And so when you look at the situation there and you look at it in full context, you realize, it didn't just start with this most recent shooting. All right, moving on to one last thing I want to touch on this. There's a video of an Israeli police officer kicking running in and just absolutely laying in, kicking a praying Muslim man in the ribs. And once again, just like the road story, just telling as to what's actually going on here. In January, the Nigerian Air Force carried out an airstrike against a gathering group of people in northern Nigeria and killed 170 people at unmarked refugee camp. Absolutely horrible story. And things like this don't get covered, even though this is something that's, caused far more death than most terrorist attacks have in the past 10 years or so. The media doesn't care. Nobody cares. Nobody's outraged. It's just, some Africans died. Moving on to Afghanistan, we have approximately 15 Afghan military police killed by a U.S. airstrike in the Helmand province. Don't have a lot of details on this yet, not even an official number of dead, just what witnesses were able to tell. The Taliban continue to make some progress in Afghanistan. They have now taken 2 more district headquarters from the Afghan police. The Afghan police are looking to launch a counteroffensive to try to take those back. Trump says that the war's going good in Afghanistan, says that we may not need any more troops in Afghanistan, which, sounds good on the face of it, but then you remember that, hey, he was talking with Bannon and Arab Prince about making the war in Afghanistan a private war. And so this seems to me to be even a worse outcome than, waging a military war. If it's a private war, there's less oversight, there's less accountability. Obviously, civilians are more at risk in that case. If you remember, there was massacres by Blackwater during the Iraq War, especially under George W. Bush, and Arab Prince headed Blackwater, is now heading the groups that Trump is looking at military plans from. And I think once America starts eyeing up the idea and possibly even following through with waging private warfare, we've just reached a level of insanity on the foreign policy issue. I mean, the one thing, that everybody says that a nation has to do is provide for the defense of its people, but it's really not even doing that. It's paying for other people to do so, and obviously it's risky. A lot of times they outsource the work and they're not even hiring Americans. A lot of times I think that everybody thinks these mercenaries like Blackwater are all Americans. I've heard a lot of reports of Sudanese being hired to fight in other African countries to fight in Afghanistan for the U.S. One kind of smart comment that I'll occasionally get would be that wouldn't libertarians prefer private warfare, but the answer is always no, especially not one paid for by the American empire. This while it would be a war carried out by, a private firm, how private is the firm? It does what the American government tells them to do. It is going to get a massive contract that'll probably be what makes the company stay afloat from the U.S. government, and if the U.S. government ever took that contract away, of course, a good portion of that company would be fired and everybody would likely lose their jobs, and so private warfare is not the right thing, just like private prisons aren't the right thing here at home. In Syria, we have reports of the Syrian rebel, Al-Qaeda-linked Syrian rebel group HTS controlling all of the Syrian city of Idlib. This is the capital of the Idlib province where all the terrorists have kind of been congregating in Syria, and it looks like they now control that major city. Of course, a lot of their fighting power comes from weapons provided to them by the U.S. government. Patrick Coburn wrote 2 stories on Mosul. The first is that up to 40,000 people died in Mosul. This is Patrick Coburn writing this. So while it may seem like that number is staggering and unbelievable, I don't think he would print it unless he had a good reason to think it was true. What's being described there is a river of blood. The morgues are unable to handle all the bodies coming in. As they dig through the rubble, they're finding more and more bodies. I doubt they find all the bodies, to be honest. But they're gonna find an awful lot. There's so many dead people, so much death, so much destruction. Of course, all 40,000 of those deaths would not have come at the hands of the United States, many at the hands of ISIS. However, there are a lot of bodies found under big piles of rubble, and when you look at who was creating big piles of rubble in Mosul, a lot of times it was the United States. Patrick Coburn also discusses the lack of coverage on Mosul, comparing it, like I have in the past, to Aleppo, and just how that 40,000 people could die, and that the government would underreport it so much that when you say, hey, to somebody, hey, 40,000 people died in the offensive for Mosul, the reaction is kind of, well, no, they didn't. I would have heard about it. And you never heard about it. You other than maybe the one airstrike, I think, when was it? December, maybe, kind of towards the end of Obama's term, where a whole bunch of people were killed in a building that was hit by a U.S. airstrike. Mattis says that he believes that al-Baghdadi is still alive. The YPG is making very slow progress in Raqqa. I guess they're taking a lot of casualties and having to wait for reinforcements before continuing the invasion there. In Yemen, we have Saudi Arabia killing 8 fishermen when a Saudi airstrike hit a fisher boat, and Oxfam now saying that the number of cholera cases in Yemen will likely reach 600,000. It was only like a month and a half ago that experts were saying that the cholera outbreak in Yemen would peak at 300,000, and now we're nearing 350,000. Alright, with that, I'm going to wrap up the show for today. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I will have another show out Wednesday. If you like the show, please share the show, subscribe to the show on iTunes, and rate the show on iTunes as well. I actually have quite a few new iTunes ratings, and I'm really excited about that, so if everybody could take the time to go do that, I would really appreciate it. My personal website is kylesfilesblog.com. I also blog at thelibertarianinstitute.org. My Twitter is KYAAALE. The Facebook page is Kyle's Files, and the private Facebook group is Foreign Policy Focus.